good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you're watching this in the world, I hope you guys are doing okay. So today we're doing a viewer requested video, and it comes from an individual called Guelo Mogarsin. I think I'm saying that name properly, apologies if I'm not. And they said, hey Mike, what do you think of TheFightersDen's last video about his comparing Mortal Kombat 1, SF6 and Tekken 8? And I went and watched this video just to see what it was all about. I don't always take viewer requested videos, but obviously if you have one that you want me to do, I'll always check it out and see if I can do something on the channel with it. I went to check out this video and I watched it in its entirety, and there is a portion of it that I actually want to do a reaction to because I completely disagree with the assessment that is made in this video between Mortal Kombat and Tekken, and I've outlined why. I've taken a few clips from the video and we're going to go through them one by one. It's going to be surrounding the Mortal Kombat 1 story and the Tekken 8 story, and why TheFightersDen's believes Mortal Kombat 1 was better, and I'm obviously going to be refuting that with loads of different talking points, reacting to the things that he's saying. So without further ado, we're just going to jump into the video and I'll play a clip and then I'll give you my thoughts on it. And just before we go further with this, just want to let you guys know, obviously there's no hate whatsoever towards TheFightersDen's. This is purely a reaction video and a rebuttal and a refusal of his points. It's nothing to do with his character, there's no beef between us, nothing like that whatsoever. It's literally just a reaction to his viewpoint on the story.
Which game has the better story? And this is where I actually start to cringe in this video. This is where I realize that this community is all over the place. Now the answer should be straightforward, but because of the bias and sheep mentality, this now becomes somewhat of a debate. Are we being for real here?
The framing of this is already trying to lure people in to agree with whatever he is about to say, unless they're stupid or biased, which isn't the case because people's enjoyments of story modes are going to vary heavily for a multitude of reasons. The answer is not straightforward, everyone has their own reasons, which we're going to get into.
Oh, don't worry, I'll be the one to explain it. I'm the lore guy, right? So you're gonna find something interesting here. Alright, let's go with Tekken. Now if you are a Jin main, my god, you were jumping for joy, you were rejoicing. We saw your boy Jin get pushed to the moon. We saw the guy get his ass kicked, get propped up by every cast member. Oh Jin, you're the only one that can beat him. We ain't shit. And Jin did his thing. We saw the guy lose his power, gain back his power, get his power from his mom, and then defeat the bad guy and save the day. Jin finished his story. He was out here looking like Cody Rhodes. But just one question. What about everyone else's story? I'm gonna let that marinate.
It is true that outside of the Mishima story, most of the other characters have been hung out to dry. That much is true. I've taken issue with that before, but with Tekken 7 and Tekken 8, I didn't mind it as much because they were billed to me as the final moments of the original Mishima saga. Still, I will agree, the overall treatment of other characters in the main Tekken storyline is extremely lackluster, but that's also been true for a lot of shonen anime, which is something I've compared Tekken to for a long time. Tekken has sort of followed the standard shonen tropes, the standard shonen focusing on a few characters with the supporting characters propping them up. That's been very true for shonen for a very long time. You can see this in Dragon Ball, you can see it in Naruto for example. The comparison to Cody Rhodes' story in the WWE is actually one that sticks, but I'll let him continue with that point before I go on.
I'm assuming we have a lot of wrestling fans on this channel. Y'all all saw WrestleMania, right? Let me ask you a couple of questions. Would Cody Rhodes' story be as good if The Rock didn't interfere? If The Undertaker didn't interfere, if John Cena, if there were no interferences in that match and the rest of the WrestleMania card was shit, would that WrestleMania be regarded as one of the best WrestleManias ever? Are you getting my point here or what?
Nah, probably not, but everyone did interfere here because if they didn't, Kazuya had Jin dead to rights. It's because a lot of the cast supported Jin in his way back to the top that he was able to find himself and overcome Kazuya. Now granted, WWE's story with Cody spanned over 2 years and included stories fostered by the actions of the bloodline dating back to the pandemic era, but on a much less fleshed out scale obviously. They kinda did follow the same path, obviously the WWE one was much better.
Let me give you another one. You're not gonna win an Oscar for Movie of the Year if only one actor killed it. You need to have a good supporting cast, interesting stories going on in between. Okay, that's how you're gonna get Movie of the Year. One guy acting good is not gonna cut it.
Well, that's not true. Anyone seen Forrest Gump? Didn't that win Movie of the Year, or didn't it win an Oscar? The supporting cast in that was good. They were decent. You know, they held the film up. No shade on them whatsoever. But who carried it? Who really carried that film? What's the reason that won movie of the year? It was Forrest Gump. Tom Hanks is the one that killed it. He absolutely crushed that role. That's just one example. What about The Whale with Brendan Fraser? Again, really good supporting cast. However, that film got its accolades because of Brendan Fraser. Anyone that says otherwise is going to be lying. Again, the supporting cast, amazing in that film. Really, really good. But it was not going to go anywhere without Brendan Fraser. You could even use the Joker, Joaquin Phoenix's Joker, for example. Even less of a supporting cast in that. But that film was carried to the top and carried to the forefront of the conversation because of Joaquin Phoenix.
Now, the main reason we, as players, play these story modes are to see our character obviously look like a badass, have interesting stories and character development. We all can agree on that, right? Alright, cool. So now I'm going to ask you guys a series of questions and answer them as I ask you. This is going to be one of the most interactive videos ever because I'm going to be asking you guys a ton of questions. But hey, so if we want an interesting story and character development, let me ask you this question. Who had the more interesting story and better character development? Baraka or Paul?
I'll play along even though I'm going to disagree with the take later on because I don't like the phrasing of the question to get his point across. But to play along, of course, Baraka. Paul's a joke now. He's been a joke for a very long time. We've wanted Paul to get a more serious story for ages now, and Namco seem insistent on turning him into a joke. So of course, Baraka has the much better story in Mortal Kombat 1, much more fleshed out. There's no question about that.
Right now, everyone watching the video started laughing their ass off. Ken, what are you saying? Okay, cool, I'm messing with you, right? Let me give you another one. Who had the more interesting story, Baraka or Law?
I'd give the same response as I did previously.
Everyone right now is still laughing like, wow. Let me stop playing with you. Let's come with the real. Who had the more interesting story and better character development? Baraka or Paul, Law, Lee, Jack, Brian Fury, Steve Fox combined?
I'd still say Baraka, but again, it's a poor question, but I'll get into why as the video progresses.
Oh yeah, oh shit. That part. Who had the more interesting story? Who had better character development? Ashra or Oscar?
Yeah, okay, it was Ashra.
Again, let me stop wasting your time. Let's get straight to it. Every single person watching this video now, who had the more interesting story and better character development? Ashra or Oscar, Lily, Nina, Alisa combined?
Alright man, we get it. Let's move on. Because again, this is a very poorly phrased question. I don't think it's a fair question to get the point across, but we're going to move on from it.
Yeah. Oh dear. Oh dear. Now maybe some of y'all got lost in the sauce, lost on the hype train, or lost on the wave, but I hate to be the one to break it to you. The Mortal Kombat 1 story is better than the Tekken 8 story simply because 95% of the Tekken cast underperformed.
That is not the only way to measure if a story is good. Did more Mortal Kombat characters get decent to good representation in the story? Yes, undoubtedly. There was a shockingly poor level of representation for a lot of characters in the Tekken story. 100% no refuting that. But this isn't where I'd say the be all and end all is for the stories. Stories are usually made up of beginning, middles and ends. And for a lot of people, the beginning and the end are make or break scenarios. They are the most important periods of the story. They carry a ton of weight. Just look at Game of Thrones. Amazing beginning, amazing middle, shambolic end. Shambolic to the point that for me personally, I just can't bring myself to watch the House of Dragons. I can't bring myself to watch that new series because the ending means a lot to me. The payoff means a lot. The ending of something is the culmination of stories told over years. Years of investment, time invested into these things. I need a payoff or a satisfying conclusion when I'm investing my time into something. Otherwise, all of your character development amounts to nothing. It was all a waste of time. Your very intentions go out of the window and invalidate the story, at least for me. Please remember, this is how I view stories, and this is how Fighters Den does. Neither of us, neither myself or him, can tell you we are right. Undoubtedly, some of you are going to agree with him and some of you are going to agree with me, but neither of us are objectively right. Anyways, more on that in a moment.
95% of the Tekken casts were underdeveloped at 0 character progression, whereas multiple characters in Mortal Kombat 1 progressed. What are we doing here?
I think the main reason people have an issue with this supposed Mortal Kombat progression is the constant resetting over universes, NetherRealm's inability to just stop bringing other universes into the fray. Progression means less when there's no consequences for the characters. We've killed Sindel, but it's okay because we have another one. Oh, Raiden lost to Shao Kahn? No problem, just go back in time. The actions of the characters carry less weight, so even though there is more narrative pieces spread out for the cast in Mortal Kombat, does it really matter if they're going to amount to nothing in the end? The MCU tropes are overplayed and overused, and I think people really came together to express that with this story. How are we to know NetherRealm won't do another reset for the next MK game? It's become their thing now. It often exposes bad writing. It usually means we've written ourselves into a corner and now we're going to start again or get counterparts to fill certain roles. I'm not a fan of it. It's like a cop-out. I'd rather have one story that follows from beginning to end. They could have done something really cool with the Mortal Kombat story for Mortal Kombat 9. They didn't have to reset the timeline. They could have continued and they could have had a world where Shao Kahn was now in charge and the people that had survived could work their way up. Maybe don't murder everybody in one game. Maybe that's a thing.
Something that is clear as day. And here's a joke about all of this. When Mortal Kombat 1 was released and everyone played the story, everyone and their mom, this story is amazing. The only complaint most people had is they didn't like the ending. But for the most part, everyone, every Mortal Kombat creator, every lore head was telling you this story was awesome. So now 6 months later or however long, why is the story now shit when the story didn't change? Was the story desyncing within these last 6 months? Did the story get patched out? Of course not. Everyone's perception has changed because now people are shitting on the game and people are going with the crowd. People are now backtracking. No one stands on business. No one stands on their word. Why would I, someone who played the game 8 months ago and acknowledged that I didn't like the ending and I wanted Onaga to be the boss, then praise the rest of the game for the character developments of someone like a Baraka, Reptile, Ashra, the best version of Kenshi, best version of Johnny Cage. Raiden was awesome in this. We even got the good Sindel, something fans have been crying for years. Why am I now, 8 months later, gonna turn around and say the story mode is shit? To pander to everyone else shitting on the game now? I am not a sheep. I don't have a shepherd. I speak my mind and I stick to my word. Why would I flip-flop?
I'm not sure who he's referring to in terms of people saying it's amazing. I think most people agreed that it was good. Amazing might be a bit of a stretch. Now, what I will say about the Mortal Kombat story is that it is beautifully animated. When they're talking to each other, when they're moving around, when it's not in gameplay, it looks gorgeous. The voice acting was actually really good. Apart from Megan Fox, that was abysmal. She somehow made Ronda Rousey look good, and honestly, I didn't think that was possible, but here we are. The pacing was very good, and overall, without gameplay, it's about 4 hours long. Now, 2 hours and 45 minutes in is where it stops being good in my opinion and becomes a bit of a shit show, because out of nowhere they decided to bring back the old universe. I don't know about you guys, but I was really excited to have a self-contained story, and as soon as the old timeline invaded, I personally checked out, and for me it tanked the entire story. So 2 hours and 45 minutes is great, but 1 hour and 50 minutes is a bit of an L. It's a bit of a big L in my opinion. It's even less acceptable because it's the latter portion of the game. So much like Game of Thrones, where the last season buried the entire show for me, I was done. Endings and payoffs are massively important to me, and they're massively important to a lot of people, and that is why Game of Thrones got so much stick. For as many good seasons as it had in the lead up, it had one season with all of the payoffs that we were waiting for to absolutely tank it. What Daenerys did made no sense. We couldn't see the battle, everything was just dark. There was nothing to see there. The Night King, him being defeated by that silly girl Arya, no payoff whatsoever. All of this talk of these White Walkers and this, that and the other, and it all tanked. All of these stories and the progression that we went through with Jaime and the Lannisters, for him to die by bricks falling on his head, for him to relapse and just go back to his sister. No, you invalidate everything about your story when the ending is poor, and a lot of people feel like that. It was unsatisfactory, it was more than lackluster, and it put a lot of people people off. He said, was the story desyncing? Did the story get patched out? And no, obviously not. I get the joke, but the implication here is that everyone's just jumping on a bandwagon of hate. And I've started to notice more and more that this is the cop-out go-to that people use when they see a lot of people saying the same thing. When people dogpiled Helldivers 2's community managers for making lame comments, oh, it's the conservatives jumping on a bandwagon. When people discover things about the heat mechanic in Tekken 8 they don't like, oh, it's people jumping on a bandwagon. When people called out the female Ghostbusters film back in 2016, oh, it's a bandwagon. Has anyone stopped to think that maybe a lot of people are saying the same thing because it's actually just bad? As if people don't have agency and the mental wherewithal to critique things in their own way. Now, there's been plenty of times where I've said something's really good and then later on changed my mind. A good example of this, and my friends watching this will remember this one, in one of my group chats I said that anime Demon Slayer was a masterpiece. A few months down the line I changed my mind after watching it back and concluded that I was swept up in the hype of Tengen versus Gyutaro, and actually there was some issues with the show and there was some issues with the season, and whilst it was still good, it was definitely no masterpiece. You don't have to double down on something just because you said it once. You can revise your opinions and change them accordingly, and as any forward thinking person would, they should. That's what I think a lot of people did with the Mortal Kombat story. Initially I was disappointed, but after a few weeks passed I came to realize that I was more than disappointed, that I didn't think it was as good as I initially thought. It happens. It's not always a bandwagon. It's not that people are sheep, but if you haven't changed your mind, then good for you. That's great. I have changed my mind, and I've changed it a few times about a few things. I always change my mind about things. I'm not the pandering type, and I'm certainly no sheep to do that. By the way, whenever someone calls you a sheep, have you ever noticed that there's never any evidence? There's never anything to point to. A bunch of people started ripping into Mortal Kombat 1 earlier this year, so because it was an abundance of people, it must be herd mentality. It can't just be that we've all identified that maybe the game's not good. I mean, how about now? Everyone's kind of agreeing that Mortal Kombat 1 is in a better place, right? We all agree it's getting better with the inclusion of Ermac, and I'd say even Omni-Man. I'm quite impressed with Omni-Man. I know he's very basic, but I like the way he's animated, I like the way he plays. People are saying Mortal Kombat 1 is in a better place, and that's something that I'm hearing across the board. Is it moving into a better place, or are people just being sheep again?
But don't worry, I got you. I'll break it down for you. Let's give you another example. Lee May, right? We can all admit Lee May is like what? A D, C level. Not even C level, D level Mortal Kombat character. Lee May is not in the top 30 Mortal Kombat characters. We can all agree on that, right? Let's talk about Lee May's run in Mortal Kombat 1. We first see Lee May, and Melina approaches her and cuts her down. Talks to her like she's trash, and we know that from her voice tone and the facial expressions. There is a problem. There is a story going on here. Liu Kang somewhat explains. We then see Lee May being talked down to by Sindel. Lee May has a chance to somewhat redeem herself here in front of Sindel, but loses. And after the fight, we can visually see her upset, head held down, walked off, embarrassed. All throughout the game, Lee May is being bodied and talked down to. It now comes to her chapter. After a heartfelt speech, Lee May claps Tonya, gets into the throne room, kicks ass, saves Queen Sindel from her own daughter Melina. Sindel now acknowledges Lee May and forgives her. That is what you call an actual good story and character development. Okay, now I will ask you this question. Who had the better story? Who had better character development? Lee May or Nina and King combined?
Lee May certainly had better character development than Nina and King combined, there's absolutely no question about that, but the development of one character and the lack of development of other characters aren't the be all and end all, as I said previously. Ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, whilst there are a lot of character interactions and developments in Mortal Kombat 1, by the end of the game nobody was really talking about them, because you went from a self-contained story that was building everyone up to an apocalyptic multiverse event. It literally went from 0 to 100, whereas Tekken 8, although it's a much more simple, streamlined story that primarily focuses on two guys, Jin and Kazuya, it never went from 0 to 100, almost invalidating the actions of those that came before the climax. Was it silly shonen fun? Yes, 100%. But it had a satisfying beginning, a satisfying middle, and a satisfying end. As a matter of fact, the end that culminated was pretty epic. I was pretty impressed with it. A very epic two-part fight that kept raising the stakes and intensifying the atmosphere down to the very last punch. I remember playing it on stream and laughing my head off with the stream because it was literally that silly brilliant, that over the top. You had this god level fight with Jin and Kazuya where they're out in space on like a meteorite, and the meteorite crashes into the ground and they lose their devil powers, and now they're just throwing straight hands, and they were throwing hands at each other for ages. The music was ramping up, Jin's styles were changing, it was becoming more and more intense, everyone was having a good time. I did not get that feeling with Mortal Kombat 1. I did not feel good by the end of it. Tekken felt natural and necessary. It felt like a natural and necessary sequel to Heihachi and Kazuya, where one fight happened on a volcano, this fight's happening on the water, there's lightning everywhere. It looked really cool. It felt like the climax of a story that has been told for 30 years, a very satisfying one.
Let me tell you one that will shock you. Who had a better story and better character development? Lee Mei or freaking Jun Kazama? Someone the entire Tekken fan base was waiting for to kick ass for over 30 years. She was in the story for like 30 seconds. Someone like a Baraka, a Lee Mei, and Ashra had better development than Jun Kazama. That is crazy to me.
Yes, Jun's inclusion in the story is very disappointing and really served no purpose other than to make her playable for us. She apparently shows up right at the end, so maybe we will get story expansion with her, but there's no doubt that her inclusion was very lackluster.
Like, in what world could you think the Tekken 8 story was better? Did you get a different copy of Tekken 8 and did I get a different copy of Mortal Kombat 1? And let me say this, even if you are one of those people who didn't like the ending, you know, into this DC multiverse bullshit, I hear you. I didn't like the ending. In fact, I wanted Onaga to be the boss, so I hear you on that. But guess what? Both games had 15 chapters. Those were the last 3 chapters. So even if you give the last 3 chapters to Tekken, which you probably should, the first 12 chapters, which is practically 80% of the game, goes to Mortal Kombat because they had better storytelling, more exciting stories, and better character development. That is a fact. That would make it 12-3. If I am playing you in the first to 15 and I beat you 12-3, I washed you. That wasn't close, that's not debatable. So if this DC multiverse bullshit was the main reason you think Tekken 8 story is better than the Mortal Kombat 1 story, it fails, my guy. Because the first 12 chapters, which is the majority of the game, clears Tekken 8. There is literally no way around it. You can try to worm your way around and make excuses. It doesn't work. You're talking to someone who actually knows the lore of both games. And while I think Tekken 8 is a massive improvement story-wise over Tekken 7, there were a lot of problems there. Just don't be biased, be real, call it down the middle. And it doesn't take an expert to tell you that while a character like Jin or Reina got over, the majority of the rest of the cast underperformed, bro. Someone like Asuka, a character that's been useless for over 20 years, zero progression. Legacy characters like King and Nina wasted, zero progression. Tell me when I am lying.
Okay, let's put aside the condescending tone and the I know better than you because I know the lore shtick, even though a lot of us know the lore of both in depth. I don't agree with his assessment on the chapters in saying that it was only 3 chapters at the end that were really bad and the rest were good. It was 1 hour and 15 minutes of a 4-hour story. This is significant. It's significant because I don't think all chapters were the exact same length, and even if they were, that's a substantial amount of time to tank the story. So no, that definitely doesn't automatically give Mortal Kombat the win. Again, there have been plenty of shows that have been on TV and enjoyed years and years of solid seasons, only for the final 2 seasons to be absolute dog shit and tank the shows, and in some cases even get the shows cancelled. It's not about the number of chapters, it's about the quality within those chapters. The quality of the last 1 hour and 15 minutes of MK1 was so bad in my opinion that it supersedes the quality that came before it. And as I said, I put heavy emphasis on a worthwhile ending, as do many others. Not everyone views stories in the same light. Now, I am saying this for things that are heavily driven by their narrative. This does not account for games where the gameplay is the driving force. I'd be much more forgiving to something that had awesome gameplay for 12 chapters but a poor last 3, because I'm actually interacting with it and there's other takeaways there. MK and Tekken obviously only offer fighting, which I can do in any part of the game, so the story they tell to me is going to be incredibly important. There were, however, plenty of issues with the Tekken 8 story, there's no doubt about that, both in power scaling and in the representation of characters. It really made no sense for Jin to catch up to Kazuya in the fashion he did. He should have lost. Kazuya should have won this story, especially considering the fact that Kazuya soloed Azazel, who previously gave Jin a ton of problems when he wasn't even struggling with his devil powers. It also completely swept Jin's war crimes under the rug and almost rewrote him as a complete babyface when this guy actually started World War III. It made no sense for Reina to even be able to touch Kazuya after he'd beaten Azazel, and something that both Mortal Kombat and Tekken did was they let you use characters in certain matchups that have no business winning in the fight, only to advance the narrative.
Now, did every single character in Mortal Kombat kill it? Did they all blow it out of the park? No. I think certain characters flopped. For me, I think Natara flopped. I think Megan Fox buried that broad. That voice acting was diabolical.
We can both agree there. I don't know what the hell they were thinking with that one, to be honest with you. It's a shame as well because a lot of people were excited to see Natara back, myself included. I think they've officially tanked the character now and I'm no longer interested in seeing her come back.
And let's just be honest, here's the true facts. In order for Tekken to ever catch up to Mortal Kombat in terms of story, they need to develop the other characters. They need to put the same effort into the other characters that they do with the Mishimas. Otherwise, no one's gonna care when they come on screen. Don't you get it? Someone like Leo is uninteresting. So when he appeared on screen with Jin, no one gave a shit. Ain't no one checking for no Leo. His character's dead. And we had a cool moment with Claudio, but you know what would have made this more impactful? If there was a build to it. If we got to know Claudio, do the sacrifice himself, and that was it. It didn't hit as hard as it could. Tell me when I am lying.
He's definitely not lying in that part, and I agree. Claudio's death would have been a lot more impactful if we were made to give a shit about him, but Namco has definitely failed on that front. There's no question about that. Nobody cared when Leo was on screen, that is true. I don't have anything to disagree with there.
Which scenes hit harder? Everyone trying to defeat Devil Kazuya and getting clapped, or everyone trying to defeat Ermac and then Kenshi finally got his powers and with Ashura defeated Ermac? Again, which scene hits harder? Zafina dying in front of Jin, allegedly, so we thought, or Sindel dying in front of King Jared and her daughters?
The Ermac scene definitely hit harder, there's no doubt about that. That was a well done and interesting twist on things, and Kenshi getting his sword was cool as well. However, the Sindel thing, absolutely not. She died and there was another one standing right there. Another multiverse patch. Nobody cares when people die in Mortal Kombat anymore. They'll have them come in from another world, it doesn't mean anything. There's zero impact when deaths happen. She died and I said, oh, it's like Dragon Ball. The Dragon Balls are there, so when someone dies I'm like, okay, well they'll be back next season because they'll just resurrect them. So yeah, I was like, oh, she's dead. Guess the evil one's here now though, right? Whilst the Tekken scenes he mentioned weren't necessarily impactful, they were at least quite fun and goofy, and I remember being really into them, not because they necessarily made me care about the characters, but because they were almost leaning into the over-the-top Dragon Ball Z nature of it all, and I found myself having a lot of fun. You fall short when you are trying to desperately make people feel emotional about something, but there's a multiverse counterpart standing right there, and yes, you also fail to capture emotion if you haven't built up characters, so they both fall short there.
But as far as it goes between these two games, which story was better? It is clearly MK1. All you have to do is drop your bias, get off the bandwagon and think for yourself, compare all the characters together, compare their developments, compare the chapter endings, and compare all the chapters and you will get your answer. All it was is that everyone was shitting on MK while jumping on the Tekken bandwagon. Now 3 months later everyone is shitting on Tekken. Now, according to the crowd, according to the herd, now Tekken is a shit game. This is why you can't listen to all this bullshit. You have to think for yourself, because everyone flip-flops. Stand on your opinion and you'll have the answer.
Well, let me just check you real quick before I address the rest of the points you made to close this. I haven't seen a soul speak about the Tekken story since release. Everyone sort of agreed it was some dumb, goofy, over-the-top fun. The last fight delivered and we were happy with it, and that's remained the same. People have become more critical about the gameplay because with a game as complex as Tekken, things might appear a certain way on day one, and as you play and explore the game and its mechanics and matchups, you find that you don't like it as much as you thought you did initially. As if we have to be like, well, I said it was awesome on day one, so now I have to stick to that. No, you learn, you adjust your views to fit your newfound information, and then you keep exploring. So just to be clear, nobody's shitting on the Tekken story out of nowhere. Standing on business is saying what you believe. The bandwagon argument is a cop-out. Now then, for me, I prefer the Tekken 8 story overall. Yes, it only focused on 2 characters, and yes, it left much to be desired for everyone else in character endings and general inclusion within the story, but this was billed to me as the apocalyptic Mishima event, the end of an era. Like The Undertaker and Triple H, all roads lead to this one, and I honestly think they delivered on that front. It was what I expected and then some in terms of action. I didn't feel disappointed. No, it didn't come out the gate swinging like a blockbuster Netflix show the way Mortal Kombat did, but it didn't have to. It was like watching an anime. I felt like I was watching a shonen anime. Like watching the final showdown between Naruto and Sasuke, Goku and Vegeta, Ichigo and Ishida, Luffy and Blackbeard, Jotaro and Dio. You get the point. It satisfied me from beginning to end, and whilst my guy lost, Kazuya lost the fight, it still was a lot of fun, even though I wouldn't say it made complete sense, and it reached its natural conclusion. No Elseworld Heihachi coming out of a portal, no end of the world scenario for everybody else, no cliffhanger, lack of conclusion ending. They swung at each other's faces like it was a battle from Baki Hanma, and Kazuya, after all of the years, finally went down. So, I completely disagree with the assessment. There are some things in there, actually, to take that back, that I did agree with, but overall I disagree. I think that you can like stories for different reasons. You can go into stories expecting certain things or not expecting certain things. However you decide to frame it, or however you decide to see it, whatever your perception is, there's no clear-cut answer on which one is better. I'm willing to accept people thinking that the Mortal Kombat 1 story was better. If they offer an explanation as to why, I'm all for it, because it's subjective. Nobody's right or wrong on this. I've given you my reasons for why I like Tekken 8. Give me your reasons for why you liked Mortal Kombat 1 more in the comment section below. Maybe you liked the Tekken 8 story more and you agree with me. Let me know in the comment section below. As always, guys, thank you for all the love and support, and thank you for sending this video over to me. If there are other videos you want to get my opinions on, I won't always honor them, but if they're interesting enough and I have enough to say, then I'll make a video on it. Anyways, guys, take care of yourselves. I'll catch you soon. Peace.